All right, so let's start. We're going to do the body for the saber-tooth tiger. You can see my name's up at the top there with the file that we chose and selected in the first video. We printed it out with the name at the top. So here, let's get going. We're going to work on the body. Now, for the body of these animals, I suggest you use what I call the rule of two. You might break it with the rule of one. So either one shape, two shapes. I'd be real cautious. Some animals might need it, but I'd be very cautious before you go with three shapes for this. I probably wouldn't recommend it. First of all, what we're not modeling this chunk that goes all the way back here. That's going to be part of the leg. If you think about it, this is kind of the rear end of the animal, and it would have two, hate to say it, two cheeks sticking out there. That's not a part of the main body. We're going to model that later when we do the legs. We have to use our imagination, and this chunk is part of the leg. Behind it, there is a main shape for the body. Now look, what you want to do is you want to kind of, and by the way, students, use a pencil, not scissors and tape. Use a pencil. You're going to need to redo this or whatever, made a mistake. The only reason I'm going to use a marker is because I want you to be able to see it better on the camera. And I've done this, I don't know, probably 50 times over the years. All right, so you can see I have a curve here and I have a curve here. What I'm going to do is, without touching the paper, I'm going to get that muscle memory down. For this guy, I'm probably going to use a big rule of like one shape for the body. So let's go ahead and do that right now. After I've kind of gone around in circles a few times, just like that. So we have the body, and we need to connect that to the neck. Now the neck here, we're probably going to use what I would call as a cone that's been truncated. So flat, flat, it's going to be like a trapezoid. And we can model that in Tinkercad very easily with the cone shape. And I'll show you how to modify that. You know, when I see this, I'm probably going to go a little further with this so it goes a little bit better connected to the neck. This chunk is part of the arm. This is the shoulder that we're going to connect with the arm. We'll do that later. Don't model that lump right there. That's part of the arm. So I look here. I'm going to grab a neck, and the neck is going to go back about right here. And look, you can see the skull. The biggest deal is these shapes need to overlap significantly. See this? That's part of the body, and I'm overlapping it very heavily with the neck. Here, and look, the neck of mine extends well into the skull. See, the skull goes here, and then we got kind of a trapezoid shape. So it's a cone that had the end of it kind of cut off. And we'll be able to model that very easily in Tinkercad. Okay, the next step on this, and we're going to take it body, and then we'll do measurements. So just the body and the neck. And then we'll do measurements and we'll put it into Tinkercad. Okay, so let's measure these shapes. For the body, most of the animals we're going to have, you could use rectangles. Most of the time, we're going to be using large oval shapes. Those will be modeled with spheres when we get to Tinkercad. This neck is going to be modeled with a cone, and we can set different dimensions for the front and the back. So look, what you want to do for the body is you want to measure the first line goes across the longest possible line that kind of goes through the center. So let's take a look here. Okay, if I look right here, the longest line I think would be through the center would be about right here. And I measure that. Here, let me just draw it for you so you can kind of see. So I'm measuring this line right here to here. Okay, and I look, we zero our ruler right here at the edge of that shape. And you can see it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, just 130 millimeters. So I'm going to write up here 130, so length times width. Now, how do you measure the width? 90-degree angle through the middle. So whatever these shapes are going to be tilted, some of them. We take it at a 90 degree. See how that's a right angle this makes? Right angle, 90 degrees. You don't have to write that on your drawing. So I'm going to go up here, zero our ruler at the top, 60, about 69. So this is 130 by 69. If you had two shapes in there, you have to do that. Now let's measure the trapezoid. For the trapezoid, what we're going to do is, see from the flat parts, we're going to measure in between those, and we get about 49, about 49. So let's go with the height is 49. And how wide is this? Measure across the longest side, not the short side. Measure the longest side, because that's the base that we're going to have to adjust. And we get about 57. 49 by 57. All right, let's go into Tinkercad and put these in there. Okay, so we got my buddy right here, and we've already measured those shapes. So I'm going to go to plus, create a new 3D design. Hey man, do yourself a favor. This is the most important step. Before you do anything, always switch to the flat view. It removes parallax from the equation. Parallax means that in 3 dimensions, objects closer to you look larger than the ones far away. We want to get rid of that. We want things to look perfect in a way that's not realistic, but it's better for designing. See, when you see this cube in a way that doesn't look real, looks real, not real. That's what you want. Notice how the front of this build plane is the same size as the back. Totally not realistic, but way better for design. All right, so the two shapes I need for this are a sphere for the body. We're going to stretch it out to make it into the shape we want. And we need a cone for the neck. I know that sounds insane because ours doesn't go to a point at the top. We'll fix that later, okay? All right, so let's move this over. I'm going to grab my shape. The two dimensions that we're manipulating are the length and the height. We actually can't tell from a flat drawing what the width of it will be. But the main mistake kids will make is they'll put in these two. Don't. The two dimensions on your drawing are this one and then switch to the height. All right, this is real easy. 130, enter. And my height, you can see, is 69. Now mine has, I feel like it has a slight tilt to it. So I'm just going to zoom out, get a front view, straight on front view. Whoops, I kind of screwed up, didn't I? Let's go back and retry that. I'm looking at this animal from the right side, so let's get that correct. That'll make it a little bit easier in the future for me. So let's do that. 1, 3, 0. And the height was 69. Enter. Okay, let's get a right view. And I want to match the tilt. It looks like mine is tilted down just a little bit. So move to the outside of the circle and tilt just a couple of degrees maybe for mine. You can kind of see that from the paper. I measured it kind of straight across, but I feel like when I look at it, it feels like it's kind of tilting down towards the front. All right, cool. Now, obviously, we look at this shape. Obviously, it's going to be much wider than this. We're going to have to kind of take a guess at that. If we want an idea, we could go here and go tiger front view. And you can like see like a tiger that's alive today. There's no way to get a real idea of how like it's an extinct animal, right? My saber-tooth tiger. Oh, great. Google's just taking forever. Okay, it finally loaded up. Actually, tigers are a lot thinner than what I had imagined. I would have never guessed. You can kind of see compared to the body, it's not very thick at all. I think that should be plenty. And I'm going to say a saber-tooth tiger might be a little bit thicker. I'm guessing. Who knows? All right, so that looks pretty good for my first shape. I'm going to elevate this up in the air. All right, the other thing I want you to do is go to Solid, See where it says the color? You can change it to whatever color you want, but I want you to change this to transparent on. That's going to work later when we have to overlap our shapes. It allows you to see the overlap significantly. All right, let's put our numbers in. Right over here, we have 49 and 57. 49 is how tall it is. That's the height of this thing. 49. Don't worry, we'll change it in a minute to reflect the fact that it's not doesn't come to a point. And 57 for the base width. Okay. Now, what we can do is we can take this and we can adjust, go to top radius, and hey, we want to be real careful when we adjust this. Just little steps at a time. It doesn't take much. You really have to go slow. I think that looks pretty good. That matches, if we look at the right view, that matches about the shape of what my saber-tooth tiger, maybe a little less. Eh, and you can actually type it in. You know, I want 6.8, 6.8. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. Let's make that transparent. And now we're going to basically adjust it, and we're going to really look at this overlap and try to match the angle. First of all, we're going to elevate this, grab the black arrow and pull it up. I know it's not, oh, it is kind of lined up. I'll make it a little thicker right now, whatever. There we go. And then we're going to take this and rotate it so the angle is matching the angle it is in the drawing. I think that looks pretty good. And now we're going to move with arrow keys over and then down. And I want to kind of match the overlap that we have in the drawing. So I'm looking at this shape right in here. See that shape that's a D? And I want to match that. That's why we made them transparent. And of course, it does kind of stick up a little more. Don't worry, the shoulders for the legs are going to kind of hide that little inconsistency. You know what? I'm pretty happy with that the way it is. You can move it around with your arrow keys. If your arrow keys are going too big at a time, you can change it, go down to snap grid and change it to 0.1 and you get much more small incremental steps. Let's take a look at it from the top. These are not aligned correctly. We don't need to guess. I don't like that. I want this to be wider now I see it. And again, adjusting the width is kind of guesswork because our drawing cannot tell us that. It's a two-dimensional drawing. The third dimension, we'll have to guess at it. Okay, grab both of these now and use this align tool and line them up with the middle dot and they'll be perfectly snapped in the middle. Wow, I don't think the neck should be wider than the body. Let's try that again. So we'll narrow up the neck and realign our shapes. Hey, we can always adjust the width later on. Hey, that looks really good. Next step, final step, grab them both and put them on lock. So now when we get into making our legs, we don't screw up any of the hard work that we've already done. When they're locked, there they are. You can just do this, right? You can't move them. If you all want to unlock them, you can just always unlock them later. But lock them down so that when you're putting the legs on later in the next video, you don't screw anything up. Hey, thanks for listening.